Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Lilly podcast. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here today. If you're watching this or listening right now, thank you so much for taking the time to join me on this incredible journey. Before we dive into today's topic, I want to make a quick announcement about what we've been building here. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button because we're creating some really amazing content just for you. Share this podcast with your friends and family who you think would benefit from learning how to communicate more effectively and confidently. Also, make sure you check out our podcast playlist for more episodes like this one. We've got a whole collection of resources designed to help you grow, develop new skills, and transform the way you connect with others through the power of meaningful communication. Now, let's get into today's episode. I'm really excited to talk with you about something that so many people struggle with, and honestly, something that can genuinely change your life if you master it. How many times have you been in a conversation and noticed yourself hesitating? You know exactly what you want to say. You can picture it perfectly in your mind, but when you actually open your mouth to speak, something happens. Your words get stuck, your voice becomes shaky, you pause awkwardly between sentences. You end up using filler words like or like way more than you'd like to. If this sounds familiar, don't feel bad about it. Seriously, you are not alone in experiencing this challenge. This is something that impacts millions of people around the world every single day. Students, professionals, public speakers, and everyday people all struggle with the same issue, speaking fluently without constant pausing and hesitation. The thing is, this challenge doesn't define your intelligence or your worth. It's not because you don't know what you're talking about. It's not because you're not smart enough or articulate enough. The real issue is that there's a disconnect happening between your brain and your mouth. There's a gap between what you're thinking and what you're actually saying out loud. Think about this for a moment. When you're having a conversation in your native language, you don't have to think about every single word before you say it, right? You just talk. The words flow naturally. You don't pause to consider your grammar. You don't stop to make sure your pronunciation is perfect. You simply express yourself, and it comes out naturally. That's because your brain has been processing that language for your entire life. But when you're learning a new language or trying to communicate in English, your brain doesn't have that same automatic processing system yet. You have to think about things consciously. You have to translate what you want to say. You have to verify your grammar. You have to check your pronunciation. And all of that conscious thinking creates delays. Those delays become pauses. Those pauses make you feel less confident. That lack of confidence makes you pause even more. It's a cycle. And today, I want to help you break that cycle completely. The beautiful news is that this is completely fixable. This is absolutely solvable. With the right strategies, consistent practice, and a commitment to putting in the effort, you can train your brain to process speech automatically. You can develop the ability to think in English directly without translation. You can learn to speak smoothly, confidently, and naturally, even if you've struggled with this for years. Let me break down the main reasons why people pause when they're speaking. Understanding these reasons is absolutely critical because you can't fix a problem that you don't understand. You have to identify what's causing the pauses before you can eliminate them. Reason number 1: confidence and self-doubt. The first reason is lack of confidence. When you're not absolutely certain about the correct word to use, or when you're unsure about whether your grammar is correct, you hesitate. Your brain says, wait, am I saying this right? Is this the correct form? Will people understand me? And that doubt creates a pause. This is such a common experience. Even people who speak multiple languages fluently report feeling less confident when they're speaking a second or third language. They know the words, they know the grammar, but that little voice of doubt still whispers, what if I'm wrong? And that doubt manifests as a hesitation in your speech. Reason number 2, the translation trap. The second major reason is the habit of translating from your native language into English. This is something that almost every learner does, especially in the beginning stages. Your brain receives a thought in your native language, and then it tries to translate that thought into English before you speak it. Now, translation takes time. It takes mental energy. It requires your brain to pause, access your memory, search for the right words, check if the word is appropriate, verify the grammar, and then finally produce the speech. By the time all of that is done, you've already created a natural pause in the conversation. The problem gets even worse when you're not sure about the translation. You might think, how do I say this in English? What's the right word for this concept? Is it a lot or lots? Should I use the present tense or the present perfect tense? And each one of those questions creates another delay. Reason number 3, self-monitoring and fear of mistakes. The third major reason is that you're monitoring yourself constantly. You're listening to yourself speak, evaluating every word, checking your pronunciation, analyzing your grammar in real time. That constant self-monitoring takes up mental resources that could otherwise be going towards simply expressing yourself. It's like if you tried to ride a bicycle while constantly checking whether you're balancing correctly. That focused attention on balance actually makes it harder to balance naturally. The same thing happens with speech. When you're constantly monitoring yourself, you interrupt the natural flow of speaking. Reason number 4, limited automatic processing. The fourth reason is that you simply haven't practiced enough for speech to become automatic. Your brain needs repetition. It needs exposure. It needs practice to develop what we call automatic processing, which is when your brain can produce speech without conscious effort. Think about typing on a keyboard. When you first learn to type, you have to look at each key. You have to think about where each letter is located. It's slow and effortful. But after years of typing, you don't have to think about it anymore. Your fingers know where to go automatically. Your brain can focus on the content of what you're writing instead of worrying about where the keys are. The same thing needs to happen with speaking English. You need enough repetition and practice that producing English speech becomes automatic, so your brain can focus on what you want to say instead of how to say it. Reason number 5, limited vocabulary in specific contexts. The fifth reason is that you might not have enough vocabulary in the specific context or topic that you're discussing. If someone asks you to talk about your job and you've never learned the specific vocabulary related to your industry, you're going to pause. You're going to struggle to find the words you need. Similarly, if you're traveling and someone asks you a question about a specific location and you haven't learned the vocabulary related to travel or geography, you're going to hesitate. These vocabulary gaps are absolutely normal and they're fixable. Now that we understand why pauses happen, let's talk about the most powerful strategy for eliminating them. This is the foundation that everything else is built on. I want you to really pay attention to this section because this single strategy can transform the way you speak. The foundational strategy is to train your brain to think in English directly, without translation. This is the game changer. This is what separates people who speak fluently from people who constantly pause and hesitate. Here's how it works. Right now, when you think in your native language, you're not translating. You don't think, in my language, I want to express that the weather is pleasant, and then translate the words. You just think the thought directly in your native language. It's automatic. It's unconscious. It's fast. That's exactly what you need to develop with English. You need to get to the point where when you have a thought, it appears in English automatically without going through the translation process. Here's a simple way to start practicing this. Pick a simple thought that you have regularly throughout your day. For example, I want to drink water. Instead of thinking it in your native language and then translating it, just think it directly in English. I want to drink water. Now, this might feel uncomfortable at first. Your brain might resist. It might feel unnatural. That's completely normal. Your brain is used to processing thoughts in your native language, so forcing it to think in English initially feels strange. But just like any new skill, with practice, it becomes easier, and then it becomes natural, and then it becomes automatic. Start with very simple thoughts and very simple sentences. You don't need to think in complex, sophisticated English. You don't need perfect grammar. Simple, basic English is absolutely fine. The goal here is to start the process of English thinking. Let me give you some more examples. When you wake up in the morning, instead of thinking in your native language, think in English. I'm waking up now. When you're brushing your teeth, think, I'm brushing my teeth. When you're making breakfast, think, I'm making my breakfast. When you're getting dressed, think, I'm putting on my clothes. These simple thoughts, repeated throughout your day, start to train your brain to process English automatically. And the beautiful thing is, once your brain starts thinking in English consistently, your speech becomes more fluent automatically. You're not translating anymore. The English is just coming out. Now, let me give you a practical exercise that you can start doing today. This exercise is called narration, and it's incredibly powerful. The narration exercise works like this. Choose a simple activity that you do regularly. Let's say you're getting ready in the morning. Instead of just doing the activity silently in your head, narrate each step out loud in English. For example, you could say, I'm opening my eyes now. Then, I'm stretching my arms. Then, I'm getting out of bed. Then, I'm putting my feet on the floor. Then, I'm walking toward the bathroom. Then, I'm turning on the light. Then, I'm looking at myself in the mirror. Then, I'm picking up my toothbrush. Then, I'm applying toothpaste to my toothbrush. Then, I'm brushing my upper teeth. Then, I'm brushing my lower teeth. Then, I'm brushing my back teeth carefully. When you narrate like this, several important things are happening. First, you're speaking English consistently throughout an activity. Second, you're creating a strong association between the activity and the English words used to describe it. Third, you're practicing describing simple, everyday actions, which are situations you'll definitely encounter in real conversations. The key here is that you don't need perfect sentences. You don't need complicated grammar. Simple, basic descriptions are exactly what you want. You could say, I'm brushing my teeth. That's fine. You don't need to say, currently I am engaged in the practice of dental hygiene by means of utilizing a toothbrush. That's unnecessarily complicated. Simple is better. Simple is more natural. Simple is what native speakers use in their everyday speech, and simple is what you should practice. Now, when you're doing this narration practice, don't worry about mistakes. Seriously, don't worry at all. In fact, I want you to actively ignore any mistakes you make. If you say something that's grammatically incorrect, just keep going. Don't stop to correct yourself. Don't pause to fix the sentence. Just keep talking. This is so important because when you stop to correct yourself, you're breaking the flow of speaking. You're interrupting the natural rhythm. You're creating a pause, and pauses are exactly what we're trying to eliminate. The goal of this exercise is to keep your speech flowing without long pauses. That's the primary objective. Perfection in grammar comes later. Right now, we're focused on developing fluency and eliminating hesitation. I want you to commit to doing this narration exercise for at least 2 weeks. Do it every day. Narrate at least one activity every single day. It can be getting ready in the morning. It can be making breakfast. It can be getting to work or school. It can be exercising. It can be preparing dinner. It can be getting ready for bed. The specific activity doesn't matter. What matters is that you're speaking English continuously throughout an activity, building your ability to produce English without pausing to think. The next powerful technique is called shadowing, and I want you to understand how powerful this technique truly is. Shadowing has been used by language learners for decades, and the research shows that it's one of the most effective methods for developing fluency and natural pronunciation. Here's how shadowing works. You find an audio or video clip of a native English speaker. You listen to a sentence that they say, and then you repeat that sentence immediately, trying to match their rhythm, speed, pronunciation, and intonation as closely as possible. You're almost speaking at the same time as them, like you're echoing what they're saying. The beautiful thing about shadowing is that it does several important things at once. First, it trains your ear to recognize natural English speech patterns. Second, it trains your mouth and your throat to produce those same patterns. Third, it builds muscle memory in the parts of your mouth and face that are responsible for speech production. Fourth, it exposes you to authentic English as it's actually spoken by native speakers, not the simplified English you might find in textbooks. Let me walk you through how to implement shadowing correctly. First, choose a source for your shadowing practice. This could be a YouTube video, a podcast, an audiobook, or a movie or television show. You want something with clear, understandable English. Don't start with something too advanced or too unclear. Choose something that's appropriate to your level. If you're a beginner, choose something simple and clear. If you're advanced, you can choose something more challenging. Second, pick a short segment. Don't try to shadow for an hour. That's too much. Start with just 1 or 2 minutes of content. That's plenty for a single shadowing session. Third, listen to the segment once without trying to speak. Just listen and get a sense of the content and the delivery. Understand what the speaker is saying. Fourth, play the segment again, and this time try to repeat the words out loud, matching the speaker's rhythm and speed as closely as you possibly can. Don't worry about getting the words exactly right. Don't worry about perfecting every pronunciation. Just do your best to match their delivery. Fifth, repeat step 4 several times. The more repetitions you do, the better. Each time you repeat it, you should get closer to matching the speaker's delivery. Now, when you first try shadowing, it's going to feel really strange and difficult. You might think, I can't do this. This is too hard. That's completely normal. Everyone feels that way when they first start shadowing. It's a challenging skill. But here's the thing. That difficulty is exactly why it's so effective. Your brain is being pushed to work harder. It's being challenged to process language faster. And that challenge is what develops your ability to speak fluently. I recommend practicing shadowing for just 5 to 10 minutes every day. That's it. 5 to 10 minutes is enough. If you do 5 to 10 minutes every single day, you'll start noticing improvement within a few weeks. I'm not exaggerating. This is based on extensive research and thousands of learners' experiences. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine that you choose a YouTube channel that's relevant to your interests. Maybe it's a cooking channel, or a travel channel, or a fitness channel, or a business channel. You pick an episode that's about 5 minutes long. You watch the first 2 minutes without trying to speak. You understand the content. Then you go back to the beginning of those 2 minutes and you try to shadow. You repeat each sentence or phrase, trying to match the speaker's speed and pronunciation. After you've shadowed the same 2 minutes, maybe 4 or 5 times, you move on to the next 2 minutes of the video. Then you do the same process. By the time you've gone through a 5-minute video, you've done about 30 minutes of shadowing spread across several days. The key is consistency. Do it every day. Make it a habit. Make it part of your daily routine, just like brushing your teeth or eating breakfast. Now, there's a variation of shadowing that's even more advanced. After you've shadowed a segment several times and you're starting to feel comfortable with it, try this. Shadow the segment once more, but this time, when the speaker pauses briefly, try to anticipate what they're going to say next and say it at the same time as them. This builds your ability to think ahead while speaking, which we'll talk more about later. Here's a reality about speaking. You're not always going to know exactly what you want to say immediately. Sometimes you need a moment to organize your thoughts. Sometimes you need to think about the right word. Sometimes you're surprised by a question and you need a moment to formulate an answer. In these moments, many learners make the mistake of going silent. They pause awkwardly without saying anything, and that awkward silence actually draws more attention to the fact that they're struggling. It makes them feel more self-conscious. It makes them feel more anxious. But native speakers don't do that. Native speakers use what we call conversation fillers. These are short phrases that you can use while you're thinking about what to say next. These fillers serve multiple purposes. They maintain the flow of the conversation. They buy you time to organize your thoughts. They let the other person know that you're still engaged and thinking about what they said. They prevent awkward silences. Let me give you some examples of common conversation fillers. Well is a very common one. Let me think, or let me see. That's a great question. I haven't thought about that before. Interesting point. I mean, what I'm trying to say is, in my opinion, actually, well, the thing is, now that you mention it, I would say that, if I'm being honest, that's a good point. These fillers are short enough that they don't take much time, but they're long enough that they give you a moment to gather your thoughts. They also sound natural because native speakers use them all the time. Let me give you some context examples so you can see how these fillers are used in actual conversation. Imagine someone asks you, "What's your favorite hobby?" You could respond, "Well, that's a great question. I think my favorite hobby is probably reading because it helps me relax and escape from the stress of daily life." Notice how, "Well, that's a great question," gives you a moment to think about what you want to say, and it sounds completely natural. A native speaker would say exactly the same thing. Here's another example. Someone asks you, "What's your favorite food?" You could say, "Let me think for a moment. I would say that pizza is one of my favorite foods because it's delicious and you can have so many different toppings and variations." Again, "Let me think for a moment" gives you a moment to formulate your answer, and it sounds natural and conversational. Let me give you another example. Someone asks, "What do you think about climate change?" You could say, "That's definitely an important topic. If I'm being honest, I think we need to take more action to protect the environment because the changes happening right now are quite serious. That's definitely an important topic." And if I'm being honest, and they both sound like something a native speaker would say. Now, here's the key. Use these fillers strategically. Don't use them for every sentence. That would sound unnatural. Use them when you actually need time to think. Use them when you're responding to a question that catches you off guard. Use them when you're trying to organize your thoughts. I want you to memorize at least 5 conversation fillers so they come naturally to you. Pick 5 that sound good to you and that you feel comfortable using. Practice using them in conversations. Notice how natural speakers use them in videos or podcasts. Here's a practice exercise you can do. I'll give you a question, and you try to answer it using one of the conversation fillers we discussed. The question is, "What's your favorite movie and why?" You could answer, "Well, that's a good question. I would say that my favorite movie is one that I watched recently called Inception because it has an amazing story and incredible special effects." Another question. What would you like to do in the future? You could answer, let me think about that for a moment. I'm actually considering starting my own business because I have an idea that I think could really help people. Another question, how do you spend your free time? You could answer, that's an interesting question. I would say that I spend a lot of my free time exercising because I believe it's important for both my physical and mental health. Practice answering questions using these fillers. The more you practice, the more natural they'll feel, and the less you'll actually need them because your speech will start flowing more smoothly. One of the reasons people pause while speaking is that they don't have the vocabulary they need for the topic they're discussing. If someone asks you a question about a topic that you haven't studied, you're going to struggle to find the right words. That struggle manifests as pauses, hesitations, and awkward silences. But here's the good news. You can eliminate this problem by intentionally building vocabulary in the topics that are important to you or that come up regularly in your life. Think about the topics that you talk about most often. Maybe you talk about your job or your school. Maybe you talk about your family and hobbies. Maybe you talk about food because you eat multiple times every day. Maybe you talk about travel because you're interested in visiting new places. Maybe you talk about health and fitness because you exercise regularly. Whatever topics come up regularly in your life, those are the topics you should focus on learning vocabulary for. Because when you're in a real conversation about one of these topics, you'll already know the words you need. You won't have to pause and search for vocabulary. The words will be right there, ready for you to use. Let me give you a concrete example. Let's say you go to restaurants regularly, and you frequently have conversations about food and dining experiences. You should make sure you know how to say things like, "Can I have the menu, please? I'd like a table for two. What do you recommend? Can you make it without onions? Is there dairy in this dish? How long will it take? Can I have a glass of water? The food was delicious. Can I get the check? Do you accept credit cards?" If you know all of these expressions, then the next time you're at a restaurant, you can order your food smoothly without pausing or struggling for words. The words are already in your brain, ready to use. Here's how to build topic-specific vocabulary. First, identify the topics that are most relevant to your life. Write down 3 to 5 topics that you talk about regularly or that you care about. Second, for each topic, brainstorm 10 to 20 common things you might say or questions you might be asked. Write them down. Third, say each of those things out loud multiple times. Repeat them. Get comfortable with how they sound and how they feel to say. Fourth, try using them in real conversations when the topic comes up. This is the most important step because practicing in real conversations is what makes these expressions truly automatic. Let me give you another example. Let's say your work is an important topic in your life. You probably talk about your job regularly. You should make sure you know how to talk about your job in English. You should know how to say things like, "I work as a job title. My job is interesting because I work in the industry. My responsibilities include, I enjoy my job because the most challenging part of my job is, my colleagues are, I work in location. My typical day involves, I usually start work at, I finish work at." If you know all of these expressions and phrases related to your job, then whenever someone asks you about your work, you can talk about it fluently without constant pausing to search for words. Now here's the thing. You don't have to memorize these phrases like you're memorizing for a test. You're not trying to memorize. You're trying to internalize them through repetition. You practice them until they become automatic. You say them out loud, you use them in conversations. You expose yourself to them repeatedly until your brain just knows them naturally. Let me give you a practice exercise. Think about a topic that comes up regularly in your life. Let's say it's your morning routine. Think about your morning routine from the moment you wake up to the moment you leave your house. Now, describe your entire morning routine out loud in English without stopping. Try to be detailed. Try to use specific vocabulary. Try to speak smoothly without pausing. You might say something like, "Every morning I wake up at 6:30 and turn off my alarm. I check my phone for messages and notifications for about 5 minutes. Then I get out of bed and walk to the bathroom. I brush my teeth and wash my face with soap and water. After that, I take a shower, which usually takes about 15 minutes. I dry off and go back to my room to get dressed. I choose my clothes based on the weather and my schedule for the day. I put on my shoes and pick up my bag. Then I have breakfast, which is usually eggs and toast, and I drink a cup of coffee or tea. Finally, I check that I have my wallet and my keys, and then I leave the house and head to work." That's a detailed, descriptive account of a simple topic, using specific vocabulary related to that topic. The first time you try this, you might pause a few times and search for words, but after you've practiced it a few times, you'll be able to do it smoothly without many pauses. Here's something that's counterintuitive, but it's really important. Speaking slowly doesn't actually help you reduce pauses. In fact, it often makes the problem worse. Many learners think, if I speak slowly, I'll have more time to think about my words and my grammar, and I'll be able to speak more accurately. That sounds logical, but it's not actually how speech works. When you speak too slowly, several problems happen. First, your thoughts start to wander. Your brain gets bored. Instead of focusing on the words you're saying, your mind starts thinking about other things. Second, you have too much time to second-guess yourself. You pause, and then, while you're paused, you start thinking, wait, is that the right word? Is my pronunciation correct? Is that the right grammar? And that self-doubt makes you pause even longer. Third, speaking slowly makes your speech sound unnatural and mechanical, which actually makes listeners less comfortable, not more comfortable. Native speakers don't speak in slow, careful, mechanical ways. They speak at a natural, conversational pace. They maintain rhythm and flow. When they search for a word, they do it quickly, and they move on. They don't sit there dwelling on whether they said something correctly. So instead of trying to speak slowly, try to speak at a natural pace. This is more challenging initially because it requires your brain to work faster. But it's actually more beneficial in the long run because you're training your brain to operate at the speed that's required for actual conversation. How do you practice speaking at a natural pace? One of the best ways is by reading out loud. Find a simple English book, magazine, article, or blog post that interests you. Read it out loud and try to read it at a natural, conversational pace, the way you would read if you were speaking to a friend. Practice reading out loud for 10 minutes. Just 10 minutes. That's all you need. Reading out loud trains multiple things at once. It trains your ability to decode written English. It trains your ability to produce English speech. It trains your ability to maintain a natural speaking pace. It improves your pronunciation and intonation. It builds confidence in your speaking abilities. Let me give you an example. You could choose a simple book, maybe a book that was written for English learners, or a children's book, or a young adult novel. You read a page or two out loud every day. You try to read at a natural pace. After you've read the same passage several times, move on to the next passage. This gradual progression helps your brain adjust to the pace and the content. Now, here's an important note. When you're reading out loud, don't stop to correct yourself if you make a mistake. Just keep reading. The goal is to maintain fluency and natural pace, not to achieve perfect accuracy. You'll naturally improve your accuracy over time as you expose yourself to more English and as your skills develop. Let me give you a text that you can use for practice if you'd like. This is a short story, and I want you to read it out loud at a natural pace. Don't read it too fast. Don't read it too slow. Read it the way you would tell a story to a friend. Yesterday, I went to the park with my friend Sarah. We walked along the path for about an hour, and we talked about our plans for the future. The weather was beautiful. The sun was shining, and there was a nice breeze. We saw some kids playing soccer on the grass, and we stopped to watch them for a while. After our walk, we went to a small cafe and bought ice cream. We sat on a bench under a big tree and enjoyed our ice cream while watching people go by. It was a simple day, but I felt really happy and grateful to have such a good friend. That passage is a good example of simple, natural English at a conversational pace. When you read it out loud, try to read it the way it sounds natural, with proper intonation and rhythm, at a pace that feels comfortable and natural. Here's something that might surprise you. English has many sentence patterns that are simple and common. If you master these sentence patterns, you can construct an enormous number of sentences without ever having to worry about grammar or sentence structure because you're following a proven pattern. Think of sentence patterns like templates. You learn the template, and then you fill in the blanks with different words. This is incredibly powerful because it removes the burden of figuring out the grammar on the fly while you're speaking. Let me give you some common sentence patterns. Pattern 1. I like, love, or enjoy. Noun or gerund. Verb ing. Examples. I love reading. I enjoy watching movies. I like cooking new recipes. I love traveling to new countries. I enjoy spending time with my family. This pattern is so useful because you can use it to talk about your interests, your hobbies, things you enjoy, or things you like, and the grammar is always the same. You just fill in the blank with a noun or an activity in the gerund form. Pattern 2. I'm going to plus base verb. I'm going to meet my friend. I'm going to cook dinner. I'm going to visit my cousin next week. This pattern is perfect for talking about your plans and your future intentions. The structure is always the same. I'm going to plus the basic form of a verb. The grammar never changes. Pattern 3. I think, believe, that clause. Examples. I think that education is important. I believe that everyone deserves a chance. I think that technology has changed our lives. I believe that we should help each other. This pattern is great for expressing opinions and beliefs. You can say, I think, or I believe, and then just say whatever you want. The listener understands that you're expressing your opinion. Pattern 4. I need to base verb. Examples. I need to finish my homework. I need to call the doctor. I need to buy groceries. I need to practice English more. I need to sleep earlier. This pattern is useful for expressing necessity and things that need to be done. Pattern 5. I'm interested in, noun or gerund. Examples. I'm interested in learning languages. I'm interested in photography. I'm interested in starting a business. I'm interested in environmental issues. This pattern is great for expressing what captures your interest and curiosity. Pattern 6. One thing I like about, noun, is, noun or clause. Examples. One thing I like about my job is that it's challenging. One thing I like about this city is that there are so many restaurants. One thing I like about my friend is that she's always honest. This pattern is useful for giving compliments and expressing appreciation. Pattern 7. I usually, always, often, sometimes, present tense verb. Examples. I usually wake up at 7 a.m. I always eat breakfast in the morning. I often go to the gym on weekdays. I sometimes watch movies on weekends. This pattern is essential for talking about your habits and your routine. Pattern 8. The best thing about noun is clause. Examples. The best thing about summer is that you have more free time. The best thing about my apartment is that it has a great view. The best thing about this job is that my boss is supportive. This pattern is great for expressing what's positive about something. Now, here's the beautiful thing about these patterns. They're universally applicable. You can use them in any situation. You can fill in any nouns or any verbs, and the sentence will be grammatically correct. You're no longer worried about grammar because you're following an established pattern. Let me give you a practice exercise. I'm going to give you a noun or a situation, and I want you to make sentences using at least 3 different patterns. Ready? Top it. My weekend plans. Using pattern 2. I'm going to go to the gym on Saturday morning. Using pattern 1. I enjoy spending time with my friends on the weekend. Using pattern 7. I usually go to the movies on Saturday evening. Another topic, my job. Using pattern 1. I love my job because it's interesting. Using pattern 3. I think that my job is important because it helps people. Using pattern 8. The best thing about my job is that I work with amazing colleagues. Practice creating sentences using these patterns. The more you practice, the more automatic they become, and the less you have to think about grammar while you're speaking. Now, let's talk about something that's really important but often not discussed, the psychological aspect of speaking. A lot of pausing and hesitation isn't actually caused by a lack of knowledge or a lack of ability. It's caused by fear. People are afraid of making mistakes. People are afraid of being judged. People are afraid of not being understood. People are afraid of embarrassing themselves. And that fear, that anxiety, manifests as physical symptoms like pausing, stuttering, trembling voice, or going blank. Here's the truth that I want you to really internalize. Mistakes are a completely normal and essential part of learning. Everyone makes mistakes when they're learning something new. In fact, if you're not making mistakes, it probably means you're not challenging yourself enough. Think about how you learned to ride a bicycle. You didn't learn without falling over. You fell over many times. And each time you fell, you learned something about how to balance better. The falls weren't failures. They were learning opportunities. Speaking is exactly the same. When you make a mistake in English, you're not failing. You're learning. You're getting feedback about what works and what doesn't. You're developing your skills. And native speakers completely understand this. They know that learners make mistakes. They don't judge you for it. Most native speakers respect the effort you're making to learn their language. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to make a conscious decision to embrace mistakes. I want you to stop fearing them. I want you to see them as valuable learning opportunities instead of embarrassing failures. When you're speaking and you make a mistake, notice it and then just keep going. Don't stop to correct yourself. Don't apologize. Don't dwell on it. Just keep talking. If you need to correct yourself later, you can do that. But in the moment, just keep the flow of conversation going. That's how real fluency develops. Here's another important point. You need to expose yourself to English as much as possible. The more you hear English, the more comfortable you become with it. The more you speak English, the more confident you feel. Exposure builds confidence. Confidence reduces anxiety. Reduced anxiety means fewer pauses. So start surrounding yourself with English. Watch English shows and movies. Listen to English podcasts. Listen to English music. Read English books, articles, and blogs. Follow English language social media accounts. Join English language communities, either online or in person. The more you engage with English, the more natural it becomes. Here's a confidence-building exercise that I want you to do. It's called the mirror exercise. Stand in front of a mirror and imagine that you're talking to a friend or a small group of people. Smile. Use gestures. Let your facial expressions be natural and expressive. Now, answer these questions out loud, speaking to your reflection. Question 1. What do you like to eat for breakfast? You could answer, for breakfast, I usually eat eggs and toast, or sometimes I have cereal with milk and fruit. I love breakfast because it gives me energy for the day. Question 2. Question 2. What do you do on weekends? You could answer, on weekends, I usually relax at home, spend time with my family, or go out with friends. Sometimes I exercise at the gym, and sometimes I go to the movies or visit museums. Question 3. What's your favorite movie and why? You could answer, my favorite movie is one I watched recently. I really enjoyed it because the story was engaging and the actors were excellent. I would definitely recommend it to anyone. When you answer these questions, don't worry about perfection. Don't worry about making mistakes. Just focus on speaking. Focus on maintaining eye contact with yourself in the mirror. Focus on using natural facial expressions and hand gestures. This practice builds your confidence and makes you feel more comfortable with speaking. You can also do this exercise with a friend. Ask your friend to ask you these questions and you answer them. Real conversation is the best practice, so if you can find someone to practice with, that's incredibly valuable. One skill that separates fluent speakers from hesitant speakers is the ability to think ahead while speaking. Fluent speakers don't wait until they finish saying one sentence to think about what they're going to say next. They're already planning their next few words while they're saying the current words. This might sound impossible. It might sound like something that requires superhuman abilities, but it's actually a learnable skill. With practice, you can develop the ability to multitask, speaking the current words while thinking about the next words. Here's how this works. When you're speaking a sentence, part of your brain is focused on saying the words of the current sentence, but another part of your brain is already looking ahead, thinking about what you want to say next. You're essentially running two processes at once, speaking the present and thinking about the future. This is a skill that you can practice, and practicing it reduces the pauses in your speech because you're not stopping to think about what to say next. You already know what you're going to say next because you've been thinking about it while you were speaking. Here's a practice technique called sentence chaining. This technique directly trains your brain to think ahead. Sentence chaining works like this. You start with a basic sentence. Then you extend that sentence by adding more information. Then you extend it again. You keep extending it until you can't think of anything else to add. The important part is that you keep talking continuously. You don't pause between the extensions. You just keep adding more and more information to the original sentence. Let me give you an example. You start with the sentence, I went to the market. Then you extend it. I went to the market to buy vegetables. Then you extend it again. I went to the market to buy vegetables because we were having guests for dinner. Then again, I went to the market to buy vegetables because we were having guests for dinner that evening. Then, I went to the market to buy vegetables because we were having guests for dinner that evening and I wanted to make something special. And you keep extending it. I went to the market to buy vegetables because we were having guests for dinner that evening and I wanted to make something special and I wanted to impress them with my cooking. You're taking the original sentence and continuously adding more details to it. The key is to never pause. You just keep talking, adding more information as you think of it. This practice is incredibly powerful because it trains your brain to produce speech continuously without pausing. It trains you to think of additional information while you're in the middle of speaking. It builds your ability to extend and develop your ideas. Let me give you another example to practice with. The basic sentence is, I am going to the library. Extend it. I am going to the library to return a book. Extend it again. I am going to the library to return a book that I borrowed last week. Add more. I am going to the library to return a book that I borrowed last week because it's due today. Keep extending. I am going to the library to return a book that I borrowed last week because it's due today and I don't want to pay any late fees. Add more. I am going to the library to return a book that I borrowed last week because it's due today and I don't want to pay any late fees, and I also want to find a new book to read. Can you see how the sentence keeps growing? You're adding more and more information, and you're doing it without pausing. This trains your brain to speak continuously, which directly eliminates pauses. I want you to practice sentence chaining every day for at least 1 week. Pick 3 different starting sentences. Practice extending each one as much as you can. Do it out loud. Record yourself if you can, and listen back. Notice how your ability to extend sentences without pausing improves as you practice. Here's another secret that fluent speakers use: connector words. Connector words are small words like and, but, so, because, then, however, and although. These words connect ideas together and make speech flow more smoothly. When you use connector words, your ideas don't sound disconnected and choppy. They sound connected and coherent. And when your speech flows smoothly and logically, you speak more fluently because you're not constantly stopping and starting. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're trying to tell someone about your weekend without using connector words. You might say, I went to the park. It was sunny. I took photos. I met my friend. We had lunch together. We walked around the city. We visited a museum. It was closed. We went shopping instead. We had a good time. That sounds choppy and disconnected, right? Each sentence stands alone. There's no flow. Your brain has to pause between sentences because each sentence is a separate idea. Now, let me tell the same story using connector words. I went to the park because it was sunny and I wanted to take some photos. I met my friend there and we had lunch together. After that, we walked around the city and visited a museum, but unfortunately, it was closed. So we went shopping instead, and we had a really good time. That flows so much better, right? The ideas are connected. The story flows logically from one idea to the next. And when your ideas are connected logically, your speech flows more smoothly. Here are some common connector words and how to use them. And adds information or connects similar ideas. I went to the store and I bought some vegetables and fruit. She's intelligent and she's also very kind. But I wanted to go outside, but it was raining. He's a good student, but he doesn't always study hard. So, or therefore, shows cause and effect. I was tired, so I went to bed early. She studied hard, so she did well on the test. Because gives a reason. I love this city because it's beautiful and exciting. He couldn't come because he was sick. Then, or after that, first I woke up, then I brushed my teeth, then I took a shower. We had dinner, and after that, we went to the movies. However, or nevertheless, shows contrast. The weather was bad. However, we still went to the park. It was expensive. Nevertheless, I decided to buy it. Although, or even though, shows contrast. Although it was difficult, I managed to do it. Even though she was tired, she continued working. Let me give you a practice exercise. I'm going to give you 2 sentences, and I want you to connect them using a connector word. Sentence 1, I was hungry. Sentence 2, I made breakfast. Connected. I was hungry, so I made breakfast. Sentence 1, the movie was long. Sentence 2, I really enjoyed it. Connected. Although the movie was long, I really enjoyed it. Or, the movie was long, but I really enjoyed it. Sentence 1. You must return audio output only. It was raining. Sentence 2. We went for a walk. Connected. Even though it was raining, we went for a walk. Or, it was raining, but we went for a walk anyway. Practice connecting sentences using connector words every day. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes, and the more your speech flows smoothly. I want to emphasize something that's absolutely crucial for developing fluency: listening. Listening is not a passive activity. Listening is an active skill that directly improves your speaking ability. When you listen to native speakers, several important things happen. First, you train your ear to recognize natural English speech patterns, including stress, intonation, and rhythm. Second, you develop a mental library of how native speakers structure sentences and express ideas. Third, you pick up natural expressions and phrases that you can then use in your own speech. Fourth, you get exposure to a wide variety of accents and speaking styles, which makes you more adaptable. The more you listen to English, the better you become at speaking English. It's not a coincidence. Listening and speaking are closely related skills. Here's how to practice listening effectively. Choose content that interests you. It could be a podcast about a topic you care about. It could be a YouTube channel related to your hobbies. It could be a television show or a movie. The key is that you're interested in the content, so you stay engaged and you want to understand what's being said. Listen actively. Try to understand the content. Pay attention to how the speakers deliver their words. Notice the rhythm, the intonation, the stress patterns. Notice how they structure their sentences. Notice which words they emphasize. If you find something you really like, listen to it multiple times. Hearing the same content multiple times is incredibly valuable because you pick up more details each time you listen. The first time, you might understand the main ideas. The second time, you might notice specific phrases and expressions. The third time, you might start noticing the speech patterns and rhythm. After you've listened to something several times, try repeating it out loud. You don't have to repeat it perfectly. Just do your best to reproduce the words, the rhythm, and the intonation. This is shadowing, which we talked about earlier, and it's incredibly effective. Let me give you some specific content recommendations that are great for listening practice. Podcasts are excellent because they feature native speakers having real conversations. Look for podcasts about topics that interest you. YouTube channels are great too, especially channels that feature conversations or storytelling. TED Talks are excellent for listening practice because the speakers are clear and engaging. Movies and television shows are good for learning natural conversation, slang, and cultural context. Audiobooks are great for hearing longer, more complex English. Choose 1 or 2 sources that you really enjoy. Listen to them regularly. Make it part of your daily routine, the same way you brush your teeth or eat breakfast. Just 15 to 30 minutes of listening per day will significantly improve your ability to speak English. Now I want to teach you how to do what I call a complete fluency session. This is a comprehensive practice technique that combines multiple strategies we've talked about, and it's incredibly effective. A complete fluency session works like this. You choose a simple topic related to your everyday life. You commit to speaking about that topic continuously for 3 to 5 minutes without stopping. You don't prepare what you're going to say beforehand. You just start talking and you keep going. You describe the topic in as much detail as you can. The goal is not to be perfect. The goal is to keep talking. You're practicing the ability to produce English speech continuously without pausing. You're practicing developing your ideas. You're practicing expressing yourself. Let me give you some good topics for fluency sessions. Your morning routine, your daily schedule, your job or your school, your hobbies and interests, your family and friends, a place you like to go, a book you've read or a movie you've watched, a trip or vacation, your goals and dreams, what you did yesterday. Let me walk you through an example. The topic is my morning routine. You start speaking. Every morning, I wake up at around 7. I hear my alarm going off, and I usually hit the snooze button once or twice before I actually get out of bed. Once I'm finally up, I go to the bathroom and brush my teeth with toothpaste. Then I splash some water on my face to help me wake up. After that, I take a shower, which usually takes about 15 to 20 minutes. I wash my hair and my whole body with soap and shampoo. When I get out of the shower, I dry off with a towel and go back to my bedroom. I open my closet and choose what I'm going to wear based on what I have planned for the day and what the weather is like. I usually pick out regular clothes like jeans and a shirt. Then I go to the kitchen and make breakfast. I usually make eggs and toast, or sometimes I have cereal with milk and fruit. I eat breakfast while checking my phone for messages and looking out the news. Then I brush my teeth again because I just ate. Finally, I put on my shoes, grab my bag and my keys, and I leave the house to go to work. That's a complete fluency session. It's continuous, it's detailed, it's expressed smoothly without long pauses. The first time you try this, you might pause several times and search for words. But if you do this practice regularly, you'll find that you can do it more smoothly and with fewer pauses. Here's how to implement this practice. Choose a topic. Set a timer for 3 to 5 minutes. Start speaking and don't stop until the timer goes off. Speak to yourself or record yourself if you want. Just keep talking. If you get stuck, take a breath, use one of the conversation fillers we discussed, and keep going. Do this practice every day if you can, or at least 4 or 5 times per week. Use different topics. The variety helps because it keeps the practice interesting and because different topics require different vocabulary and different structures. After you've done the fluency session, you can listen back to what you said. Notice where you paused unnecessarily. Notice where your speech flowed smoothly. Notice what vocabulary you struggled with. This feedback helps you focus your future practice on the areas where you need the most improvement. You can also do fluency sessions with a partner or with a native speaker if possible. They can listen to you and ask follow-up questions, which forces you to keep talking and to develop your ideas further. Real conversation is the best practice. Here's something that many people don't think about. Your body language and your facial expressions actually affect your ability to speak fluently. When you're speaking stiff and rigid without any physical expression, it's actually harder to find the right words and to speak naturally. But when you move your body a little, use your hands to express your ideas, smile, and let your face be expressive, the language flows more naturally. Your energy is higher. You feel more connected to what you're saying, and that connection makes you speak more fluently. This is something that's important to practice, even if you feel self-conscious about it at first. When you're practicing alone, deliberately use gestures and facial expressions. Move your body. Stand up instead of sitting down. Walk around. These physical movements help your brain access language more easily. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're telling someone about a time you went hiking. As you're speaking, you could use your hands to show how high the mountain was. You could make facial expressions of effort as you're describing climbing. You could move your body to show the direction you were walking. All of these physical movements help you speak more fluently about what you experienced. This is called embodied language, and research shows that it significantly improves speech fluency. When your body is engaged in the language, your speech is more natural and more fluent. So here's what I want you to do. When you're practicing speaking, especially when you're doing those fluency sessions we talked about, deliberately use gestures and facial expressions. Move around. Let your body be expressive. Even though nobody's watching, this practice trains your body to work together with your language, and it makes your speech more natural. Try this exercise. Pick a simple action that you do regularly, like cooking a meal or getting ready for bed. Describe that action out loud, but as you're describing it, physically act out the movements. If you're describing cooking, make the movements of chopping, stirring, tasting. If you're describing getting ready for bed, make the movements of brushing your teeth, getting into bed, pulling up the blankets. This physical engagement with the language helps your brain process the language differently. It creates a stronger memory. It makes the language feel more real and more connected to actual experience. Sometimes we pause because we're trying to express something really complex in one sentence. We have this big, complicated idea in our mind, and we try to say it all at once, and it comes out garbled and confusing. We pause multiple times, we restart, we get frustrated. Here's a better approach. Break your complex thoughts down into simpler sentences. This makes your message clearer, and it makes your speech flow more smoothly because you're not trying to juggle a complicated thought while you're speaking. For example, let's say you want to express this complex idea. Although I was feeling tired and had a lot of work to do, I decided to go to the gym because I hadn't exercised in a while. Instead of trying to say that all in one sentence, you could break it down. I was tired. I also had a lot of work, but I still went to the gym. I hadn't exercised in a long time. Notice how the second version is much easier to say. Each sentence is simpler. You're not trying to juggle multiple clauses and ideas. The message is still the same, but it's expressed more simply. Here's another example. Complex. Even though I studied hard, I didn't do well on the test because I was nervous and couldn't concentrate on the questions. I studied hard, but I didn't do well on the test. I was nervous. I couldn't concentrate. The simple version is much easier to say fluently. There are no complex grammatical structures. Each sentence is short and clear. This is actually how real people speak in casual conversation. They don't use complex sentence structures. They use simple, short sentences. They express one idea per sentence, and that's what you should practice. Let me give you a practice exercise. I'm going to give you a complex sentence, and I want you to break it down into simpler sentences. Complex sentence. Because I was interested in the project and wanted to contribute to the team's success, I volunteered to take on additional responsibility. Simple version. I was interested in the project. I wanted to help the team succeed, so I volunteered to help more. Complex sentence. Although the weather was terrible and I had already planned to stay home, I decided to go out because my friend called and asked me to come. Simple version. The weather was bad. I planned to stay home, but my friend called me. She asked me to come out, so I went. Practice breaking down complex sentences into simple ones. This trains your brain to express ideas clearly and simply, which makes your speech more fluent. One of the most effective ways to prepare for real conversations is through role play. Role play is when you imagine yourself in a specific situation and you practice speaking as if that situation is actually happening. Role play is powerful because it prepares your brain for specific situations. When you actually face that situation in real life, Your brain has already practiced it. You know what to say. You're not starting from zero. For example, if you know you're going to go to a restaurant, you can practice a restaurant role play where you order food, ask questions about the menu, and interact with the server. Then, when you actually go to a restaurant, it's not a new experience. You've already practiced it. Here are some good situations to practice through role play. At a restaurant, ordering food. At a hotel, checking in. At an airport, buying a ticket. At a store, asking for help. At a doctor's office, describing symptoms. At a job interview. At a social event, making conversation. On the phone, making an appointment. At a bank, opening an account. At a library, asking for help finding a book. Here's how to do role play. First, imagine the situation vividly. Picture yourself in that place. Picture the other people. Picture what's happening. Second, decide what you want to accomplish in this interaction. Do you want to order food? Do you want to ask for directions? Do you want to make a reservation? Third, start the interaction. Say something to open the conversation, then continue with the interaction based on what you think the other person would say. For example, let's do a restaurant role play. You imagine yourself walking into a restaurant. A server comes up to you. You say, "Hello, can I have a table for two, please?" The server says, "Of course, right this way." You follow them to a table. You sit down. The server brings you menus. You say, "Thank you. What do you recommend?" The server might say something about a popular dish. You might ask questions about ingredients. You might order, and so on. You can do role play by yourself, just speaking the parts, or you can do it with a partner, where one of you is the customer and the other is the worker, and you switch roles. Role play is so valuable because it gives you practice in real situations. It removes some of the anxiety because you've already practiced. It gives you vocabulary specific to that situation, and it builds your confidence. Let me give you a specific role play scenario that you can practice. You're at a clothing store and you want to buy a shirt. You walk in and you see something you like. You. "Hi, can I try this shirt in a medium size?" Server. "Of course, the fitting rooms are over there." You. "Do you have it in another color? I love the style, but I prefer a different color." Server. "Let me check. What color are you looking for?" You. "Do you have it in blue or green?" Server. "I think we have blue in the back." You. "Great. Can you get that for me? Also, how much does this cost?" Server. "It's $45. You. "That's reasonable. Can I pay with a credit card?" Server. "Yes, we accept all major credit cards." See how you're already practicing this situation? When you actually go to a clothing store, this interaction will feel familiar. You won't be as nervous. You'll speak more fluently because you've already practiced it. Here's a practice technique that I love because it's flexible, it's simple, and it's incredibly effective. It's called a speaking journal. A speaking journal is different from a written journal. You're not writing, you're speaking. Every day, you spend 2 to 3 minutes talking about what happened in your day. You don't prepare anything, you don't write anything down, you just speak. You describe what you did, you describe how you felt, you describe what was interesting or challenging or funny about your day. The beautiful thing about a speaking journal is that you're talking about real events from your life, things that actually matter to you. And because they matter to you, the language feels more connected to real experience. Your brain processes it differently than when you're practicing abstract examples. Let me give you an example of what a speaking journal might sound like. Today was a pretty good day. I woke up at 7 o'clock, which was earlier than usual. I had a good breakfast with coffee. Then I went to work. Work was busy today because we had a lot of meetings. In the afternoon, I had lunch with my colleague, and we talked about a project we're working on. After work, I went to the gym for an hour. I did cardio and some weights. I felt good after exercising. Then I went home and made dinner. I made pasta with vegetables, and it was delicious. After dinner, I watched a little television, and then I read for a while before going to bed. Overall, it was a good day. That's a speaking journal entry. It's simple, it's about real events, it's expressed naturally, and it's incredibly valuable for developing fluency. Here's why speaking journals are so valuable. First, you're practicing expressing yourself about real, meaningful events. Second, you're not thinking about grammar or correctness. You're just trying to communicate. Third, you're building the habit of speaking English daily. Fourth, you're creating a record of your progress that you can listen back to. I highly recommend that you do a speaking journal every day, or at least 5 days a week. It takes only 2 to 3 minutes. If you can record yourself, that's even better because you can listen back and track your progress. You'll notice that over time, you speak more smoothly, you use more vocabulary, you pause less frequently, and you're more confident in your expression. Here's something that many learners underestimate: the power of repetition and review. You can't just learn something once and expect to retain it permanently. You need to see it multiple times. You need to practice it multiple times. You need to review it multiple times. This is how your brain works. When you encounter new information once, it goes into your short-term memory. But if you don't review it and repeat it, it gets forgotten. This is how your brain works. When you encounter new information once, it goes into your short-term memory. But if you don't review it and repeat it, it gets forgotten. Think about learning to multiply numbers in school. You learned 2 times 2 equals 4. But you didn't just learn it once. You practiced it over and over until it became automatic. Now you don't have to think about it. You just know it instantly. The same thing needs to happen with English. If you learn a new word, use it multiple times that day and the next day. If you learn a new sentence pattern, practice it repeatedly until it becomes automatic. If you learn a conversation response, practice it multiple times. Here's a good rule of thumb. You should encounter and practice new material at least 7 times before it becomes truly automatic. That might sound like a lot, but it's actually what the research shows about how memory works. So here's what I want you to do. Keep a list of challenging words or expressions. Review that list regularly. Use those words in sentences. Use them in conversations. Come back to them again and again until they're automatic. Also, go back and re-practice things that you've learned before. Reread passages you've read before. Re-listen to podcasts or videos you've listened to before. Redo fluency sessions on topics you've done before. Each time you do this, you're deepening your understanding and strengthening your memory. Repetition might seem boring. It might seem like you're wasting time. But actually, it's the most efficient use of your time because repetition is what creates permanent learning. Now I want to bring together all of the strategies and techniques we've discussed. These strategies work best when you use them together as part of a comprehensive approach to developing fluency. Here's what an ideal daily practice routine might look like. Spend 5 to 10 minutes doing your narration practice. Choose a simple activity and narrate it out loud in English. Spend 5 to 10 minutes doing shadowing practice. Choose a short video or audio clip and shadow it, trying to match the speaker's rhythm and pronunciation. Spend 5 to 10 minutes reading out loud. Read a simple English text at a natural pace, focusing on pronunciation and rhythm. Spend 3 to 5 minutes doing a fluency session. Choose a topic and speak continuously about it for several minutes without stopping. Spend 2 to 3 minutes doing your speaking journal. Talk about your day or something you experienced. That's 25 to 45 minutes of practice per day. Even if you do just 20 minutes, that's incredibly valuable. But ideally, you want to do at least 30 minutes per day if you're serious about developing fluency. Beyond your daily practice, you should also spend time listening to English, reading English, and, if possible, speaking with other English speakers. The more exposure you get, the faster you'll improve. Here's the important thing. You don't have to do all of these activities every single day. You can mix and match. Some days, you might focus more on listening and reading. Some days, you might focus more on speaking practice. The important thing is that you're consistently engaging with English every day. Also, remember that progress is not always linear. Some days, you'll feel like you're making great progress. Other days, you'll feel stuck. That's completely normal. Learning is not a straight line upward. It's more like a staircase, where you have periods of improvement and then periods where you feel stuck before you have another jump in improvement. Don't get discouraged by the plateaus. They're a normal part of the learning process. Now, let me address some specific challenges that many learners face when trying to speak more fluently without pausing. Challenge 1. Perfectionism. Many learners are perfectionists. They want every word to be correct. They want perfect pronunciation. They want perfect grammar. And because of this perfectionism, they pause constantly while trying to get everything right. They correct themselves frequently. They doubt themselves. Here's the truth. Fluency doesn't require perfection. Native speakers make mistakes. Native speakers sometimes mispronounce words. Native speakers sometimes use imperfect grammar. What makes speech sound fluent is not perfection. It's flow. It's confidence. It's keeping the conversation going. If you struggle with perfectionism, I want you to make a conscious decision to let go of the need for perfection. Your goal is not to speak perfectly. Your goal is to speak fluently, naturally, and confidently. Imperfect speech that flows smoothly is better than perfect speech that's full of pauses and hesitations. Challenge 2. Anxiety and nervousness. Some learners get anxious when they're speaking English. Their heart races, their palms get sweaty, their voice shakes, and that anxiety makes them pause and hesitate more. Some learners get anxious when they're speaking English. Their heart races, their palms get sweaty, their voice shakes, and that anxiety makes them pause and hesitate more. Here are some specific techniques for managing anxiety. First, deep breathing. Before you speak, take some deep breaths. Breathe in slowly through your nose, hold it for a moment, and exhale slowly through your mouth. This calms your nervous system. Second, positive self-talk. Before speaking, tell yourself encouraging things. I can do this. I'm getting better every day. It's okay to make mistakes. I'm learning. Replace negative thoughts with positive ones. Third, gradual exposure. Start with lower stress speaking situations and gradually work your way up to higher stress situations. Start speaking with close friends who are supportive. Then maybe speak with acquaintances. Then maybe speak in larger groups. This gradual progression helps you build confidence. Challenge 3. Running out of ideas. Sometimes learners freeze because they don't know what to say next. They run out of ideas. They don't know how to continue the conversation. If this happens to you, remember that you can always ask the other person a question. Asking questions is a great way to keep a conversation going. If you don't know what to say, you can ask, "What do you think about?" Or, "Have you ever?" Or, "Tell me more about." Also, remember that you can use conversation fillers while you're thinking. "Let me think," or "That's an interesting point." These give you a moment to gather your thoughts. Also, it's okay to have pauses in conversation. Not every moment needs to be filled with words. Sometimes people pause while they're thinking. That's natural and normal. Don't put pressure on yourself to speak continuously without any pauses whatsoever. The goal is to reduce unnecessary pauses and hesitation, not to eliminate all pauses. As you practice, you should be able to measure your progress. This helps you stay motivated and helps you understand what's working and what's not working in your practice. Here are some ways to measure your progress. First, record yourself speaking the same topic every week. After a few weeks, listen back to recordings from weeks earlier. You'll notice that you pause less, you speak more smoothly, you sound more confident. This is concrete evidence of your progress. Second, notice how many pauses you have in a conversation. Try to count them or keep track of them. As you practice, that number should go down. You should pause less frequently. Third, notice how quickly you can respond to questions. In the beginning, you might need several seconds to think before you can answer. As you practice, you should be able to respond more quickly because you're thinking more in English and less in translation. Fourth, ask a friend or a teacher for feedback. Have them listen to you speak and give you honest feedback about what you're doing well and what you can improve. Fifth, pay attention to your confidence. Are you feeling more confident when speaking English? Are you less nervous? Are you more willing to speak up in conversations? These are all signs of progress. Progress isn't always fast. It's not always obvious. Sometimes you might practice for weeks without noticing much change, and then suddenly you'll have a moment where you realize, wow, I'm speaking so much more smoothly than I used to. That's how progress feels. It builds slowly, and then you notice it all at once. One of the most valuable things you can do is join a community of English learners or English speakers. This gives you opportunities to practice, to get feedback, to stay motivated, and to learn from others' experiences. There are many ways to join a community. You could join an English language class. You could join an online English learning platform. You could join an English language group on social media. You could join a local conversation group or speaking club. You could find a language exchange partner. When you're in a community, you get to practice speaking with other people, which is the most authentic form of practice. You get to learn from native speakers. You get to see how other learners are progressing. You get encouragement and support. If you're shy or nervous about joining a group, start small. Find one person to practice with. It could be a friend, a classmate, or someone you meet online. Having one practice partner is less intimidating than joining a large group. The important thing is that you get regular opportunities to speak English with other people. This real-world practice is invaluable. It's impossible to overstate how important actual conversation practice is for developing fluency. The final piece of this puzzle is consistency and commitment. Everything we've talked about in this podcast will work if you're consistent. But consistency is hard. Life gets busy. You get tired. You lose motivation. But here's the truth. If you practice for just 15 to 20 minutes every single day, you will develop fluency. That's not a lot of time. That's less time than most people spend on social media. That's less time than most people spend watching television. So here's what I want you to do. Make a commitment to yourself right now. Commit to practicing English every single day for the next 30 days. Just 30 days. That's 1 month. In 30 days of consistent practice, you will notice a significant improvement in your fluency. Make your practice convenient. Schedule it at the same time every day. Make it part of your routine. Do it first thing in the morning or during your lunch break or before bed. Whatever time works for you, make it consistent. Find what you enjoy. If you don't enjoy your practice, you won't stick with it. So find activities that you actually like. If you like podcasts, do shadowing practice with podcasts. If you like movies, do shadowing practice with movies. If you like reading, do your reading practice with books that interest you. Track your progress. Record yourself. Keep a journal of what you practice. See yourself improving. This motivation keeps you going. Finally, Remember why you're doing this. You're not learning English just to pass a test or to complete an assignment. You're learning English because it opens up opportunities. It connects you with more people. It allows you to access information and ideas that might not be available in your native language. It gives you confidence and empowerment. Keep that why in mind when your motivation wavers. As we reach the end of this podcast, I want to leave you with some final thoughts and encouragement. First, I want you to know that wherever you are in your English learning journey, it's okay. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to speak flawlessly. You just have to keep practicing and keep improving. Second, I want you to celebrate how far you've come already. You've made the commitment to learn English. You've put in the effort. You've stuck with it even when it was difficult. That's something to be proud of. Third, I want you to know that the techniques and strategies we've discussed in this podcast are proven to work. They work for thousands of learners every year. They will work for you if you apply them consistently. Fourth, I want you to know that fluency is achievable. It's not something that only naturally gifted people can develop. It's a skill, and skills can be learned by anyone who's willing to put in the work. And finally, I want you to know that I believe in you. I believe that you can develop the ability to speak English fluently without constant pausing and hesitation. I believe that you can reach your goals. I believe that you can connect with people from around the world through English. And I believe that the effort you're putting in right now will pay off in amazing ways. So take these strategies, apply them in your life, practice consistently, be patient with yourself, celebrate your progress, and never, ever give up on your goal. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. It means the world to me that you chose to listen to this podcast. I hope it was helpful and valuable. I hope it gave you clarity about how to move forward in your English learning journey. Before you go, please remember to subscribe to this channel and to check out our podcast playlist for more episodes just like this one. We're constantly creating new content designed to help you grow and develop your English skills. Share this podcast with anyone you think might benefit from it. Your support and your shares mean everything to us. I'm Lily, and I'll be back soon with another episode. Until then, keep practicing, keep speaking, keep believing in yourself, and most importantly, keep moving forward on your journey to fluency. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next episode.